Josh, that's a percentage. What about real dollars? All right? Glad you asked. Everybody loves to talk about the top 1%, not paying their fair share. What I'm about to show you is I want you to be armed with the truth when you hear that. This is the percentage of the individual income tax. Remember how important individual income taxes is? Relative to how much revenue we have? This is the percentage of individual income taxes. This is the top 1%. If you don't like USA Facts, there's another group that's used by Democrats and Republicans in both state houses and Congress. It's called Tax Foundation. You can fact check me in this moment. The top 1%, last data I'm aware of, pay 42% of all income taxes. I'm going to say it again. The top 1% of earners in this country pay 42% of all income taxes. You say, all right, well, Josh, what about the top 5%? Let's add a few more people to that group. Not just the top 1%, but the top 5%. The top 5% pay almost 60% of all income taxes in this country. Let's go a little higher. So let's group a few more into them. So we're going to gather up to 1%, 5%, let's get to the top 10%. How much do all those people, to get to the inclusive element of the top 10% of earners, how much do they pay? They pay almost 72% of all income taxes in this country, for this country. Top 25% of earners pay almost 90%, high 80s, almost 90% of all income taxes in this country. The top 50% of earners in this country, we've grouped all these, so now we're going to include the top 1, the 5, top 10, now the top 50% of all earners. You know what they pay? 97% of all income taxes. But we've not talked about the lower, so you got the average income in America, then what about that bottom 50% of earners? So if I had a line to draw, it'd be right down here. You can fact check me on this. Again, Tax Foundation, if you don't like these numbers. If I want to give you that information, well, Josh, the top earners pay 50%, top 50% earners pay 97% of all taxes. What do the bottom 50% pay? Come on, do the math. It's not even 3%, it's 2.3%. 2.3% of all income taxes are paid by the bottom 50%. All right. Let's talk about what you pay for the 7 graduated tax brackets on the individual income tax. If you make $11,900, and according to the tax structure, it's 10%. But you're reading this chart wrong on the 7 graduated tax brackets if you don't know a few things. Things that all of us, have to go back to tax school to learn, me included. Recently, did you know that if you're in the $48,000 range, you don't actually pay 22% against that $48,000? You get to reduce off of it the brackets ahead of it. Because for the first $11,900, you pay at the 10% rate. And then the next level, you pay at that rate. And then when you get down to here, you reduce the brackets ahead of it, so you don't pay the 22% against it. You get to do the reduction because you got to pay 10% on the first $12,000 and so on and so on. Okay? A little complicated, I want you to know that. That's why this is laid out this way. If you read this straight across, you would say, you mean we're making the people that make less than $11,925 pay 10%? No, because the effective tax rate is different because of, come on now, this is a wise group now, how much is the standard deduction? So what does the deduction do? It reduces your liability by the amount, the dollar amount. So you take that $15,000, first $15,000, and you set it aside. Now, do you have any taxable liability? No. All right, we talked about deductions. We talked about tax credits. Now we're going to talk about a different thing called refundable tax credits. Who knows what a refundable tax credit is? A refundable tax credit is even beyond a tax credit. Whereas a tax credit, you have to actually owe something to your government. Let's say you owe $1 to your government and you've got $1 worth of tax credits. An example we talked about, now you get a $2,200 tax credit per child who lives in your home and is independent, and you owe $2,200. Again, you know that you've calculated you owe $2,200 to the federal government because of your $2,200 tax credit for your child. You owe the government nothing now, right? Well, let's say that you owe the government nothing now, and let's say you have a tax credit. A refundable tax credit. That means you don't have to owe the government anything, and a refundable tax credit will pay you. And you don't have to pay a dime in taxes. And so there's different refundable tax credit. Again, refundable tax credit, you don't have to owe anything, or pay anything in, the government will pay you. why you'll hear some CPAs talk about people who don't pay a dime in income taxes. They don't have any tax liability, but they'll get checks, $5,000, $6,000, on the up, because of the earned income tax credit. So I want you to know about that. You know who else is a beneficiary of the earned income tax credit type structure? Refundable tax credit? Wind and solar. And some of you want to know why on the budget committee, when I held the bill up over the weekend with Chip Roy and Ralph Norman and Andrew Clyde, you watch my comments, because what I learned working on the state level, watching refundable tax credits be taken from the state taxpayers to pay for every kilowatt hour of electricity produced. And they didn't know a dime in state taxes. I knew intrinsically what the numbers we were trying to use to be able to get rid of our campaign commitment Republic, get rid of the Green New Scale. I knew the $500 billion we were banking on was not going to potentially materialize. Why, Billy? Somewhere in our stats, you don't find me that chart's over there. You'll find me that chart here in a minute on the charts, what happened since 1992 on production tax credit. I had great concerns that those dollars were never going to manifest because there have been so many times over the years when Congress had promised to get rid of the production tax credit for wind, a refundable tax credit, and I began showing this to members. This is the 13 different times since the 1990s that the federal production tax, the wind industry has benefited from every time Congress said they were going to get rid of it. Page 24 in your booklet. If you'll notice, Congress said, 5.5 years from now, in 1994, we'll get rid of it. What happened? The lobbyists had the better of Congress. They made some max checks, and they kept the tax credit. And they said, 2.5 more years here, we're going to get rid of it. 13 different times since the 1990s, Congress has promised to get rid of wind and solar. The refundable tax credit. Don't owe a dime, but you get paid for every kilowatt hour of electricity produced. And you know what ended up happening? And we got into that committee. And I knew what I knew on the state level. The desire to be truthful when I could come back to you and say we can bank on that $500 billion, that's why I held the bill up. And I'm grateful to a president who instinctively, and his team, who brokered in that conversation with us to be able to get to, they understood the value of during President Trump's term, not promising a few years out, but during his term, knowing we could put an end to this 30-plus years, I think 30-plus years of defrauding you as the taxpayer. People don't have liabilities and propping up an industry that can't stand on its own. Unreliable wind and solar. You say, well, is that really that important? Yes, it is, and it's multiple faceted. When you're talking about the wind industry, you realize how many Europeans are investors, Italy, Spain are investors in the wind production. Okay? In the state level, I tell you, Oklahoma, when I was working on state level, that 60 lobbyists representing people out of state, out of country, benefit from state taxes. On the federal level, there are so many entities that are benefiting from these tax credits. We're talking about solar for a minute. Do you know anywhere from 60 to 80% of all the solar components are coming from China? So let me ask you a question. If that's happening, whose economy is improving on the back of the refundable tax credit that you are giving solar when 60 to 80% of the tax credits of the solar components are coming from China? We have been displacing American jobs for Chinese production. And one more little nice fact. If you look at all the super growth on the electricity grid, of who has been filling the void, it is wind and solar have the most aggressive growth, and in almost a 1-to-1 ratio, they have been displacing natural gas on the electric grid. And I want you to hear this. We didn't learn a lesson in 2021 in Texas. Unreliable wind and solar replacing natural gas on the electric grid because of a climate alarmist religion that is taking money from you, propping up something that can't stand on its own, taking your taxpayer money, and to the detriment of jobs that would intrinsically be in the United States, not in other countries. Okay, now, let's go back over here, Billy. Next slide. People talk about Medicaid. Josh, what about Medicaid? What did you guys do on Medicaid? You know, this is where we were headed on Medicaid spending prior to the One Big Beautiful Bill. Far in increase at the rate of inflation. Talked about it earlier. You cannot sustain government growth faster than your economy is growing. Way past the rate of inflation. After the One Big Beautiful Bill passed, Medicaid is still going to grow, but now inflation, Medicaid year over year is going to continue to get more money. When we talk about Medicaid, something I want to point out, next paragraph of this chart, is what has happened to Medicaid over the years. Originally, Medicaid, this is the population of Medicaid, the enrollment of Medicaid, about 25% of the country's population. About 1 in 4 people now are on Medicaid. Now, look at where we're at. We're at less than 10% back in 1988. I want you to watch what's happened to the poverty rate since 1988. If our goal is just to add more people on government programs, we're missing the point. If you want to help people that are hurting, that are in poverty, what should you focus on? Should you focus on getting more people enrolled in government programs? What should you focus on? Poverty rate. Yes, we'll come to your point next. You should focus on the poverty rate. What I want you to see is, when do you see the poverty rate going down? Significantly. See this period right here? That's when President Trump was in office. Pretty flat plateau of Medicaid rolling. You see this time right here, where the other time where you don't see Medicaid really growing? Do you know what happened in this time period right here? It's called the Contract with America. And you know that Bill Clinton signed work requirements in with the Republican Congress? Democrat Bill Clinton signed in work requirements. And I want you to look what happened with the poverty rate. Our people's lives improved with work requirements, based upon the example of Clinton era, thanks to Newt Gingrich in the Congress. Watch this. What happened to the poverty rate here? It went down. In tandem with what else happened? Not an increase in population. Focus should be on the poverty rate. 1965, when Medicaid was originally created, it was for the blind, the aged, the disabled, the pregnant, nursing mothers, indigent, those who are caretakers of those that are disabled, and those who find themselves in poverty. What has happened since 1965, kind of walk along here on population, all of a sudden you see this growth. What happened right here? Obamacare, the expansion of the Affordable Care Act under President Obama. And what happened? No longer were you disabled or elderly. You now, to be able-bodied, able to work, not disabled, and up to 138% of the federal poverty level. Now what you see is an increase. And what Paragon is shown by this chart, do you notice now by 2022, by the numbers here of who's on Medicaid, do you notice you now have more people above the poverty line on Medicaid than below the poverty line on Medicaid? Do you see that? And let me tell you something else that you may not realize. Do you know on the average of the history of this, back 20 years ago, state governments were putting in about 40% to pay for the services for the disabled, the elderly, and the impoverished. And the federal government was putting in a 60% match. But when Obamacare came in, the administration said, we're going to give you $9, a 90% match, if the states would put in 10%. So if you're thinking like a state lawmaker in California, then what you're going to do is you're going to see that as an opportunity to be able to bring home more dollars from the federal government, because instead of the 40-60 on the traditional population, the disabled population, the impoverished population, what you're going to find is you can get more money from the federal government if you can put more focus on the able-bodied population. And here in a minute, I'm going to show you how California, as the worst offender, used it for non-healthcare services and also to put illegals on the Medicaid, because they got $9 for every $1, and I'm going to show you that in just a second. All right. People say, all these people are going to lose their Medicaid coverage. All these people are going to lose their Medicaid coverage. Let's talk about what the CBO says, who are among those. 1.4 million of them are the illegal aliens. I'm going to show you in the next couple of charts relative to the smearing of the intent and allowing people to sign up that are illegal aliens. 4.8 million, when you're hearing these millions of people aren't going to be eligible for Medicaid, 4.8 million of them are those who are able-bodied. But I want you to watch this. Those 4.8 million don't have to lose their coverage. It's a choice. You know what the choice is? Will I work 20 hours a week, 80 hours over the course of a month, or go to school 20 hours a week, or be involved in community service for 20 hours a week, or will I choose to do other things the American Enterprise Institute finds that they're doing, and what if they'll take those 4 hours spent, you'll find on page 15, doing other things that are unproductive and then we'll replace that with something that will advance them personally, that will bless their children after them, and they'll choose to do those things, they can keep their Medicaid coverage. But based upon CBO's projection, and also kind of what we saw during the Bill Clinton administration time period, there will be people who will choose not to comply with that, and they will no longer be on Medicaid because they won't do that. And then we've got one more little cohort down here. 1.3 million Americans who don't qualify because they don't meet the income thresholds. You say, well, Josh, why would they be on Medicaid? Well, let me give you an example. Under the Biden administration, they allowed people to get enrolled in Medicaid, but for 2 years, they didn't check to see if they still were eligible. For 2 years. And so in the One Big Beautiful Bill, what occurred was they changed. It says for every 6 months, you have to provide, once you're in this, provide that you make a certain income, that you still make it to see whether or not you qualify or not. All right. That's the last slide. Still here. Put that one down. Okay? You're not convinced that we're going to increase Medicaid spending? Here's the raw numbers, page 16 in your handout. Here's the raw numbers. Medicaid will continue to grow year over year, more dollars coming from the federal government after passes the One Big Beautiful Bill. And here's the raw numbers. Still not convinced? Did you know there's $50 billion also in the One Big Beautiful Bill? For anyone who's saying my hospital, my nursing home, what's going to happen? Remember, the government's still going to grow the Medicaid program at the rate of inflation. But for those people who say, what about? What will happen? There's $50 billion more in the One Big Beautiful Bill that will go, $25 billion of it equally divided among the states under a 5-year time period. And then the remaining $25 billion, the total $50 billion, is going to be need-based, application-based. $50 billion, 5-year period. So when you hear people talking about the sky is falling scenario relative to Medicaid, government will continue to increase spending on Medicaid at the rate of inflation. The issue is going to be whether or not we are able to, for the health of America, solve the $2 trillion deficit. The government spending is what we have to get focused on as a country because we have a problem coming in about 8 years when we hit Medicare and Social Security insolvency. And Congress has got to choose what it's going to do as much as it can to right-size its fiscal house before that happens. Because that is going to be a whole other level of issues to confront. This is, if you want to take the time, page 18, this is the shell game that California utilized. Paragon Institute put this chart out. It shows you how they were able to expand other programs and be able to, for the 9-to-1 match, 90% coming from the federal government, 10% state match, how they were able to also enroll illegal aliens in Medicaid, the very worst of offenders, California. All right. What about the debt and deficit? Just talk about that's the problem. So some of us, what would be defined as a deficit hawk. I'm in Freedom Caucus. I'm on the Budget Committee. Deficit hawks that said no, 300 billion savings. We've got to get to more. We end up with 1.6. What will we strive to do? I want you to know that what you are going to hear from the CBO moving forward relative to the growth expectation, we need to take it heavy with a grain of salt based upon past. CBO is projecting, after passage of the One Big Beautiful Bill, we'll have a $3.4 trillion debt deficit over a 10-year period. 10 years after this, it'll increase the debt by $3.4 trillion. This chart we put together, I work with the Budget Committee staff, my own staff. This is a balance, zero here in the mid, page 19. If that's what CBO says is going to happen. But you need to know what they suggested as what they thought was going to happen year-over-year growth. CBO said we're going to grow at 1.8% year over year. But I want you on page 20 to look at, now I made sure to put in this so we're not misleading people. Pre-COVID, under Trump's first term, we grew at 2.8%. Under the Biden administration, we grew 2.7%. The average since World War II has been 3.1%. CBO said year over year, over 10 years, we'll average 1.8% growth. So what we on the Budget Committee, thanks to a really strong fiscal hawk, Chairman Arrington, we said 2.6%. Budget Committee said we believe that's right. 2.6%. All right. just so happens to be another 2.6 trillion more in revenue. The difference between 1.8 and the 2.6 that we believe would happen in year-over-year growth just so happens to be another 2.6 trillion more in revenue. That's going to now explain when the CBO says we're 3.4 trillion in debt, we push back and say, no. We are going to be, you didn't give us credit for 2.6 trillion. The difference between your 1.8 and our 2.6, we're going to have 2.6 trillion more in revenue. Make sure you get this, because there's two 2.6s in this. The difference between the revenue we're going to collect, between what CBO said is 1.8% growth year over year, and 2.6, what we said, just so happens to be, it brings in 2.6 trillion more in revenue over a 10-year period. Does everybody understand that? I hate that we got a redundant number there, but just so happens. All right, now the blue area. When Chip Roy, when Ralph Norman, when Andrew Clyde and I in the budget committee held the bill up over the weekend, got into negotiations with the president's team and our own House leadership, and we were able to come up with a deal and then pass it out. We then sent that to the floor. The version we sent to the floor of the House had a full balance of these accounting numbers. That blue was addressed. But when it went to the Senate, and because of the Byrd rule and some other changes, Lisa Murkowski did not like, in particular, what we did with the One Big Beautiful Bill on the wind and solar stuff. Lisa Murkowski and others, there was a decision made, and they sent us back, not fully gutting what we've done that weekend, but changing an area for a 4-year time lapse who could get admittance, when they could get admittance for wind and solar, and that refundable tax credit. That refundable tax credit cost you, remember it's a refundable tax credit, they don't have diamond tax liability, but you pay them, you as a taxpayer, pay them money for every kilowatt hour produced. Goldman Sachs said $1 trillion that thing was going to cost over 10 years, all those different green scale elements. So that number really mattered in terms of our budget numbers to make this thing work. So when the bill came back, and you want to know, Josh, why did you not put a vote up that night until later? Because that day, the president asked us to come and visit with him. There's a group of us that met with him. I wasn't feeling well that day, and I told the staff, I wasn't feeling well, so they put me on the end of the table, okay? And so I'm on the end, there's a group of us meeting with the president. The president said some things that we knew philosophically. He was with us. He gets it, what he campaigned on, the Green New Scheme. And so what they said, coming out of that meeting, based upon significant assurances of what anything we could do moving forward to execute on his agenda, to make sure the abuse of wind and solar and how it's affecting the country and displacing American jobs for foreign jobs, that we were convinced, he made a big impact on us, that we were going to be able to trust what he was saying. There were other ways to address it. So we went back that night. There were still deliberations happening. I was with the speaker all that night. Finally, we got the green light, all of us as a group. We felt confident. And here's what I have to come back and tell you now. By the way I look at the math, so I can be intellectually honest with you, the full President Trump effect, he wanted the One Big Beautiful Bill, and because of his leadership, you've got at least 3.5 more years of the 10% tariff. That blue mark now, we had to utilize 3.5 more years of tariff revenue to 10%, which the CBO says will bring in $800 billion. So I want you to know the full Trump effect on the One Big Beautiful Bill, the math balances. But what happens if what happened before when President Trump left office and his change on tariffs, what happens if President Trump, or whoever takes office after President Trump, continues those tariffs? Well, a few weeks ago we put this chart together, we saw it only as adding, not only, 1.4, the yellow down here on page 19, is additional savings. So we'll get beyond balance, and we can, over the 10 years ahead, go back savings, barring any incident like a COVID incident, okay? But nonetheless, whether it be COVID or the ability to make our debt in that 10-year time period lessen, tariffs are going to be huge. And guess what I just learned with what we learned in this town hall? On August 22nd, the CBO came back and they said, it's not just $2.2 trillion now that we believe the 10% floor is going to create the revenue coming in on the 10-year window. $4 trillion, right, Jack?
Yes, sir.
$4 trillion. So we need to go and adjust our chart. We're halfway through this 20 town hall tour. I need to go back and find a way to add in almost $2 trillion more down here. But I've also not told you about other savings. If we get in the next 2 weeks savings on holding our budget flat, which is a part of plussing up defense spending, and the ability in this next year to hold spending flat, CBO says it yields another $500 billion of savings, and then one more element for what the Freedom Caucus, thanks to the Trump administration, championed, thanks to Russ Vogt, OMB, pushing for rescission package of $9 billion, multiplied 9 times 10, what do you come up with? $90 billion. That's another $90 billion in savings. So what I want to be able to tell you, you all know I ran on the promise of doing everything I could to try to right-size our federal spending problem. I want you to know I was part of a group, grateful to a president and leadership, and Speaker Mike Johnson, who took a gamble on us early spring when we sat in his office, about 5 of us, and we said, Mike, take a chance with us on this. They were such a fragile, and Mike will tell you, it was by the grace of God, being able to keep a whole bunch of faxes within the house working together, that we were able to, by trust and relationships, be able to close this gap and be able to deliver something I'm proud of. I'm on Homeland Security. I don't have time to be able to address, actually I'm going to take just a little personal privilege here, and I want to address quickly. Y'all, we also, in trying to find a way to pay for it, you realize there's 700 more miles of physical barriers now. You realize there's 18,000 more ICE agents. Do you realize that we have created the opportunity? Already 1.5, 70% are criminal history have already been deported thanks to this administration. Do you realize what we're being able to do to unwind the 10 billion people that were let in 4 years illegally into this country? And this is the funding to be able to do it within the one big beautiful bill. In addition to that, also the things on defense that I mentioned earlier. So there's a lot more in this. I want to honor your time. Y'all know we've done 100 town halls in 2 years, live town halls. I told, when I was doing radio broadcast, this was going to be specific to the one big beautiful bill because the number of votes and the number of activity I had. I'm going to open up the questions on the House floor to keep people from, to have, in order to allow people their First Amendment right on the House floor, that's what they call 1-minute speeches. So this is your chance to have your 1-minute speech where I can hear what you have to say. I apologize because of missing the exit. Josh, where are you at? Where's Josh Hildebrand? Turn around, everybody look. Nod your head. He missed the Will Rogers exit, so I apologize for the limitations here on the question and answer session. Okay? But let's start. John, I'm going to go with you. You want the microphone? We're going to get you. Okay? Generations Goes Food Stamps to make all SNAP purchases be free of the unhealthy elements of dessert and certain things that we know drive up obesity rates, kiddos, and just, all the correlations to long-term effects of health outcomes. And so I know, based upon what Callie means, who's been a large part of the RFK Maha movement, Callie has told me personally that our bill that I now have with Mike Lee is a priority for them. We're continuing to push that, y'all, that if you are going to be on SNAP, and receiving food assistance, we think it's more than wise for the long-term health outcomes for people that may also be eligible for Medicaid, long-term other, the 65 be eligible for Medicare. It is a great investment and it's wisdom to make sure we're not allowing the purchase of sugary drinks and prepackaged desserts and healthy foods become the standard model again, and that leads to great outcomes, which not only will bless us as a nation, make us healthier, but financially will bless us from the downstream effects of health impacts, and the largest driver of our healthcare costs is hospitalization rates, and so many things can be prevented by nutrition and healthy eating. So I encourage all of you, State Senator back there in the back, State Rep, I know there's some movement afoot in Oklahoma. I think it's petitioned to be able to have some self-determinations over what they can do. Some states are petitioning. I think Oklahoma's joined that. Relative to the SNAP population. So, man, that's great. I think Oklahoma would lead the way on that. But I'd like to see the entire nation do my Leon's bill.
Thank you. My name is Jim Bell.
Yes.
And Secretary Rollins announced the appointment of Zach Schwartz as the state director for Oklahoma Rural Development. And I'm going to just read this to you. Schwartz is a full-blown advocate of energy. He attended the Wagner County Commission's meeting as a representative of Nexeris Corsica conditional use permit request for a 4,900-acre solar project in Port Oklahoma. After several meetings, the county commissioners denied Corsica's request. Nexeris has since filed a lawsuit in Wagner County District Court at CD 25-111. His support of green energy is in direct opposition to the Trump executive orders and the Trump administration policies, let alone Oklahoma's growing opposition to solar and wind energy. I'd like to know what could be done to reverse that and pull that appointment.
And you talk to your two United States Senate offices. Your goal is absolutely in that lane. The House member of the Advice and Consent Division, the Constitution is not mine. So you talk to your two U.S. senators.
Yes, I just received this information and sent off some emails today to Senator Representative Hearn as well as Representative Tom Gann, but I will pursue it further.
Thank you.
I was going to make a general request. I can't hear questions and I can't hear a lot of your answers.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'll try to help you reiterate that.
Yeah, just.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to thank you for doing such a thorough
Thank you.
presentation.
I know it's wonky. If you want more information, page 26, 27, 28, you never got to. That's for the details on the tax business. So,
And I also want to thank that this very hard task of reversing the deficit spending is actually being taken up. And I would like to say that I was very happy to see all that you had to say about the American compass and foreign tax. Because he is new conservative, like this, private market, and I was glad to see that. Now, my concerns, you can change a denominator and you can change a numerator, and your schedules come out quite a lot. I'm concerned that there's a false dichotomy in the choices. And yes, we've had this reduced spending, but there's value choices that have been made behind that.
okay.
And there's choices like the only way to have taken up tax credits and all of that is the choices that you've made on the values that you made. And I would like to see what you're going to do for longer term instead of partial solutions. One, when are you going to take up one of the six very simple, unonerous solutions for solving the social security deficit?
Right.
I refer you to articles in AARP and in other things. These are very simple.
Yes.
This is a political football only, and I want to see when Congress is going to pick it up to
Yes.
solve it. Second, immigration. You can't do just one side of it. When is Congress going to take up revising the whole immigration policy and administrative procedure and look at the third leg of that, which is let's stop people from wanting to come to this country. We're never solving it. And we're not going to do that by pushing them in the face. When is the third leg of putting in place the change that makes people want to stay home? So I want to see Congress taking that up, not just
Yeah.
filling.
Look, you tackled some big issues. And this first 6 months has been a whirlwind. You've only been in Congress like I have 2.5 years. This last especially the budget committee.
I'm just asking when you're
I
gonna.
know you, but you, yeah, no, I'm,
Put
you,
it on the schedule.
well, so what I'm saying is, we have been so busy for 6 months on this. These are other huge undertakings, and I think you're gonna see a lot of conversations happening. We've already started having conversations on the budget committee, and Jody, if you look at what happened in 1983 in the Greenspan Commission, that's where the fix came. It didn't last as long as they thought it wanted to. And so we've already taken steps in the budget committee to start trying to initiate a Greenspan type of commission. You're never gonna be able to get a fix of the insolvency of Social Security and Medicare unless you get buy-in from the American people. If you don't get buy-in from the American people, it becomes this political football. And then what I'm concerned about, what's going to happen is we're going to get to the insolvency date, and all they're going to do is pull money unfunded out of the general revenue, like they've already done, been doing for years now for Medicare. Because I showed you how Medicare is having to be pulled out. My great concern is they're going to start pulling it out of the general fund to offset it, and that's just going to make our debt deficit issue that much worse. And relative to the illegal immigration problem, conservatives for 20 years have been saying, we get the border sealed, then we'll start moving towards the conversation next. And so the American people have got to feel convinced that we've got to seal and full fix the 700-mile of fiscal barriers. Yes, they've been allocated, but we still don't have I was talking to a friend yesterday, and we still don't have the deployment of the new CBP officers yet. It takes 10 months to get us people hired. So once the American people feel like we have the southern border in place, then in terms of how do you go after the question you're talking about, but we cannot repeat what happened in Reagan in '86, where we set up a scenario where people can still come into the country, break the law to get here, and they're rewarded by some type of status. And so whatever we look at, it can't be a repeat of '86. It cannot be an uniform amnesty for labor.
Well, no, I have a couple of related questions. One is, I've heard President Trump say more than once that he's lowered drug prices by 1,500%. I'm not sure how that works together. Can you tell me what specific bills we've passed or worked on that would lower drug prices?
Mel, you're talking about things relative to state level. So you're mixing federal and state in terms of if you look at what the 18 enumerated powers say. The 18 enumerated powers that every member of Congress holds up their hand, swears an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. And most people who run for Congress don't know those 18 enumerated powers. And they don't know the 10th Amendment says the power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, but prohibited by the states, or reserved to the states where the people respect it. And so what I'm saying to you is, Oklahoma, if you want to have that conversation about grocery taxes, they've been having that conversation. Yeah, but what I'm saying is, relative to constitutional authority, the way that I have my staff analyze things, what we're allowed to do, okay, what we're allowed to do is it has to be under the framework. We are given tax status, but tell me the federal tax right now on groceries. So what I'm saying is state. We're talking about state. Who's next?
We're talking about grocery prices.
Yeah, come on, bro. I actually met him for the first time about 2 weeks ago. Can you delineate that further? Take the question really close. I want to understand what you're really asking.
Well, was that true on the farm bill, that Walmart being a big portion of it, the SNAP program?
Yes, there will be a multitude of businesses that will see a large portion of money. Anybody that's producing and selling food is getting a large portion of that for groceries.
I'm glad you're doing what you're doing.
So look, I've had pushback. When we introduced the Help the SNAP bill, there were people who weren't happy with that because they want to sell their products to go to help their homes. They make profit off of it. Okay. So is there anything else you want to add?
Yeah, regarding Social Security, we hear it all the time, the old people. If people knew how many people, 20, 30, 40, 50 were on it, his ability, Social Security, they
pay in, get one part of the trust fund, and if you don't, you get the other. You have children that are diagnosed with mental health diagnoses, and they end up on it. And so, there really needs to be an understanding about what we're doing in the Social Security system and what it was originally intended for, especially in light of what's on the horizon that's all. Okay.
Hi, Sarah Chase.
Hi,
I
Sarah.
have a question about PMs and
Yes.
how they impact our healthcare as a whole.
Yes.
So we see that Medicare, Medicaid costs are way off the chart. And I understand that PMs dictate a lot of the cost for the drugs that are preferable, not preferred, whatever. As a mom of a special needs child, we have had medication denied by a PM that is critical. However, because I'm a pharmacist, we were able to jump through the hoops and say, no, we are going to provide it, but most Americans do not do that. So how do we take the middleman
Yeah.
of the PMs out of our health insurance and healthcare,
Yes.
which would save billions of dollars
Right.
to our Medicare, Medicaid system or the private insurance?
Well, like PBM tied into health insurance in general, right?
Right.
PBM tied into health insurance conglomerates in general. I worked for Tom Coburn, some of you know this, many years ago. He was a physician, and Dr. Coburn had a plan that was being touted. It got close to getting an amount of support prior to the Affordable Care Act becoming the plan that happened, unfortunately. And Dr. Coburn, if I remember the bill he had, was the Patient's Choice Act. I may be wrong. It's been 20 years. But his plan was based upon restoring the utilization of catastrophic loss coverage that you could self-insure, high deductible policies for the minimal type maintenance issues. You pay that out of pocket. And that you would take the middleman out as much as possible, utilization of health savings accounts. I am thoroughly convinced there's lots of different avenues that people are looking at. I think some of the Christian share ministries are unique. The health savings account changes, thanks to Chip Roy. He focused in on them with one big beautiful bill. We've got to rethink. The more government has gotten involved in healthcare, if you look over the last 40 years, Tom Coburn used to say, as a physician, that every time that you see the government try to make things more affordable, it makes it too expensive for everybody. And the more you see government involved in healthcare, the cost and affordability has gone the opposite direction. So if the greatest predictor of the future is the past, right? Patrick Henry said, I have the one lamp by which my feet are guided. It's the lamp of experience. I know of no other way to tell the future than by the past. By judging by the past, we need to go the exact opposite and restore the direct relationship between the doctor and the patient. Some of these $50 to $70 a month programs that doctors are creating, where you can have, get in their little group plan. I think those are innovative to the nth degree, and we have to restore the place where you get so much of the middleman, as you said, out. That's where you'll have a true lesson of healthcare costs. I don't have the bill, I don't have the plan, I don't have the experience of Tom Coburn as a doctor. I've been focused on homeland and budget. But I am absolutely committed to finding those people who are experts in this, because the largest driver of our debt is our healthcare costs.
Sir.
Good. Tell me your name, please.
Adam Christopher.
Hi, Adam.
I'm America's beautiful woman. I have 9 children. Still.
Good for you.
6 still at home.
Yeah.
Retired Navy submarine officer.
That's great. Thanks for your service.
5 years of the government, then was a COVID shot. I've worked through your office.
Okay.
Joni, I'm talking to Dave
Yes.
today too.
Yeah.
I have issues Pryor.
Okay.
Specifically Pryor.
Okay.
Pissing them off. I had told you. Y'all took care of my initial issues.
Okay.
Created more.
By us taking care of your initial issues, you created you more.
It's weird, unless it's coincidence,
So you feel like that maybe the government didn't like the fact that we got involved?
I think so.
Okay.
And I also.
Okay. So let me ask you this.
I've been a track there for a long time, right? I joined the Navy in '94. I'm still on track there.
Okay. Well, we're more than happy, and Joni will be password to her,
Just want
that we will
face with
do
it.
that. We will make sure that we talk to Joni. Your concerns, that even though we may have fixed your initial concern, your concern is maybe government's reacting the wrong
He's
way.
worked for the government, so I wouldn't surprise me.
Okay. So we'll tell her to use extra tact in working forward on the
I'm
extra.
very tactful, so I don't care.
Well,
if you use that.
maybe we can step on people's toes and not mess up their
I
shine.
know somebody that thinks I'll-
Okay. All right. Well, John and I will remember to relate to Joni. make sure you get a card before you leave, and make sure whoever that card from our staff, that they put you immediately in contact with Joan. Okay, Dan's got it. That's it? Let's get just one more, and then just, you happen to be over here, you're close, and you got the lucky draw.
My name is Amon. Now, this is a little complicated subject. All right. So, lobbying, you got paid by APAC, $35,000.
I did not get paid by APAC,
That's what they have it on your Facebook.
So let me, can I explain to you what,
Okay, let me.
Can I-
I'm gonna finish. I'm gonna finish.
what you made a statement, and let me correct it, okay? APAC is an organization that supports Israel. Before I ran for Congress, because of my biblical beliefs,
All right.
I support Israel. I believe in Genesis 12 and Genesis 17. I believe that there is something very special biblically about the covenant with the land of Israel. It doesn't mean that I give Israel, hang on, let me finish. It doesn't mean I give Israel a pass to do whatever they want to, but I have a biblical belief.
25, verse 31 to 46.
But,
We see where it goes.
Let me finish this. Let me finish.
but I just want you to make sure you understand, there are members of APAC who also give to members of Congress, and that money is ascribed to as if it comes from APAC. But the APAC cannot, to that level, give money. But there are people who support Israel like I do, and do give me in campaign donations. Go ahead.
Okay. So, you guys, whatever APAC paid for congressmen, okay, now, last month, before you even coming to this meeting, you went to Israel.
I did go to Israel.
There is no other country allowed to take 40 member or 30 member of Congress, American Congress, to a different country. You didn't go to Britain, did you? Did you go to Canada? These are our lies too. Did you go to, I don't want you to go live, I'm Lebanese, I don't want you to go live, I don't want you to pay.
How about Syria?
Well,
How about Syria?
don't go to
Because that's what
Syria.
I've been working on for 2 weeks. Do you know about the genocide that's happening in Soweto,
I
with the
know, I
Druze?
follow up with it, I completely, I can discuss that with you all day.
The whole world, hang on, the whole world is focused on Gaza, but are you aware of what's happening with genocide in Syria?
I'm aware of everything, every little detail. Now, when you get paid by countries, then you have to pass laws that affects them, don't you? You just passed $500 million assistance to Israel, isn't that right? The last $500 million that
for years,
Tyler,
for years,
that bill that you passed on it.
So we can't keep doing this, we can't keep talking. I'm gonna pause and honor you. We need to pause and honor me. For years, the American government, who benefits from the technology advancements that go on with David Sling, you had 1,200 missiles that were launched into Israel. Do you guys know how many American citizens live in Israel?
A lot.
750,000 U.S. citizens live in Israel today. What is the size of a congressional district? 750,000. So when those 1,200 rockets are coming into Israel, designed to take out citizenship, and we provide assistance for the defense mechanisms, imagine a bullet going up and intersecting another bullet to save lives. The American system of helping pay for David Sling, the Arrow system, those are also benefiting America because of technology that we have for the future of warfare. Are you aware, in the last several months, there is technology now that was utilized, that proven, because of Israel and
Children.
hang on, in
Kids, come on, man.
in connection to the United States, are you aware that there is technology now, because of the connection between Israel and the United States, where instead of $1 million intercept of a rocket, that 30 times the amount of heat coming from an oven through lenses, they've proven taking down arrow systems coming in to kill people in Israel, and that is going to benefit. You know what the cost of the beam being shot at these aircraft to knock off a wing or to destroy them? You know what it's cost? $15 a shot. Who is that going to benefit long term? Who is that going to benefit long term? That will also benefit the United States. I'm going to let you finish the $1 billion.
There was an Israeli official in Vegas. He was trying to rape a kid. He got in jail. In the morning, they let him go on a flight. Went to Israel. Are you able to ask the Israeli official to send him back? He still worked in his same position. He tried to rape an American kid, and then they put him in jail. In the morning, they send him back to Israel. Are you able to talk to them and tell them to send him back here so he can be prosecuted in Vegas? Or you can't do that. Can you do that? Because you get paid from them, you can't
Nobody owns me, sir. Nobody owns me, sir. Nobody owns me, sir. I reject that premise. You're insinuating that somebody owns me. My support of Israel is because of a strongly held biblical belief. To imply that somebody owns me, that is not what I've proven to be as a representative. I'm going to finish this because I'm not going to, you're not going to do that. I want to say this. Everybody who's paying attention to what's happening in Israel, I want you to understand what's happening to not the 750,000 Americans in Israel. You need to be paying attention to what's going on. Tim Ballard is the only one for Sound of Freedom. The movie was written about him. I've been in meetings with Tim Ballard, Ambassador Huckabee. Do you realize that there are 750,000 people, Christians and Druze, that are being encircled in Soweto, an hour to the north of Israel, and nobody is talking about it? 750,000, up to 10,000 people have already been slaughtered. I've seen the videos of babies dead with their grandparents shoved off of rooftops to save buildings. An American citizen jumping off of a rooftop in Syria, being forced to jump off a rooftop, and while he was shot. There is a massacre and a genocide happening by the Muslim Brotherhood, and everybody is focused on Gaza, but the same ideology that Israel has to be around and coexist with, it will come to America. We've got Sharia law trying to be set up in America today. Absolutely we do. You have Sharia law trying to be established in America today. The Muslim Brotherhood is the ideology, and you've got a Turkey president, guys. You're not going to turn into chaos. We've been really good to each other today. Turkey has a president who has made statements relative to reestablishing the Ottoman Empire. And he wants to be the leader of the Muslim Brotherhood. And so we have to make sure that is what is happening in the Middle East, and we're not getting focused someplace and letting Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood play victim when there is, as a week ago, when I was in Israel, and we're fighting to make sure that they weren't within days of what was 30 wells poisoned and bombed in Syria, right across Israel's border to the north. People were about to be starved out of have no water for 750,000 people. Mel, you're being rude. You're being rude. Mel, but you don't know that God was giving up the. So I'm just gonna finish this by saying, people, you're falling into the Muslim Brotherhood trap to be focused in one area and not see the genocide that is happening in Syria. I'm sorry that other people chose to turn what was a really good civil meeting into a chaos. Billy, before we leave, I want to make sure everybody sees this. Where's the charts? Charts that show what the Democrat Party in Oklahoma decided to do. I'm going to show you what because we've done 100 town halls. It's never been like this. Let me show you what the Oklahoma Democrat Party did a week ago. A week ago, after I had a death threat personally, 2 weeks ago I had a death threat, a man in jail threatened to kill me. He is now in prison, waiting in a mental health evaluation, and then a few weeks later, the Oklahoma Democrat Party puts up this on social media. The U.S. Capitol Police tells me about it. The Oklahoma Democrat Party says Congressman Josh Brecheen gives the date and time. We've done 20 town halls, gave one of these locations. Get angry, show up, make noise. In 100 town halls, and we've done in 2 years. In 100 town halls, we've done in 2 years. We have never had people do these outbursts. Last night we had a man in Barnesville stand up and tear an American flag in half. I cannot believe that the Democrat Party would choose to shoot through private messages that is telling people that hospitals are going to close and encourage them to show up when I am choosing to be accessible to my constituents
During the work
and
week,
100
during the work
different
day.
town halls and provide an opportunity for us to do this. I want you to hear this. I hate it when people try to manipulate and control you. And we will not be in this second congressional district be controlled by Democrats who want to operate and choose to operate in a lack of stability. Thank you for those of you who chose to.